Well, moving on Undaunted tonight, let's take a look at the UN selective hearing, Ambazonians' voice ignored in human rights discussion. The people of Ambazonia were shocked to learn through social media that Volker Turk, the head of the United Nations Human Rights Office, was paying an official visit to French Cameroon. Well, the purpose of his visit was to address the ongoing conflict, right? But what was even more astonishing was that the Ambazonian leadership had not been contacted. Well, in a communique, a very recent communique by Ambazonian Secretary for Communications and IT, Dr. Mungwer, well, he highlighted that this visit shows neglect, especially since the new representative of the Secretary General in Central Africa had also failed to reach out, unlike his predecessor. Well, it also seemed as though the United Nations were not interested in hearing Ambazonian side of the story. Investigations from the home front are showing Ambazonians wondering if their situation was being ignored intentionally. The question is, why would Volker Turk only be speaking with La République du Cameroun authorities without considering the Ambazonian perspective? The lack of transparency and also communication is highly concerning. While Ambazonians appreciate all efforts that the United Nations might be making to investigate these abuses, this exclusion is too little and late too much. Now, for over the past 7 years, Ambazonians has repeatedly requested a fact-finding mission, but none had been initiated. Why do they believe that listening only to La République du Cameroun state would not reveal the full truth? This will be essentially good to bring both parties together and hear from both sides. Independent organizations should also investigate these human rights abuses, just like we've always stated. Let's take a reminder. In 2019, Ambazonians had applied to the International Criminal Court, the ICC, seeking justice for the crimes committed against them. They urged the United Nations Human Rights Office and the ICC to respond to their petition and open investigation into the abuses. The question is, what has happened so far? Well, while we are wondering, we are also doubling what the questions Dr. Martin Mungwer is asking. What has happened so far? But that's not all. The Vice President of Ambazonia was undaunted yesterday, and in the interview of yesterday with the Vice President and Stutzman, talked about the visit of Turk, the U.S. High Commissioner for Human Rights. Turk was criticized for his visit to just French Cameroons. The Ambazonia leadership has condemned it, viewing it as an intentional oversight of the plight of Ambazonians. Well, the visit, which focused on the French Cameroons, fails to address the ongoing conflict and crimes against humanity committed against the southern Cameroons Ambazonian. Well, as the Ambazonian government asserts, any meaningful diplomatic engagement should include discussions from both parties. And that's exactly what Dr. Martin Mungwer is also stating, involving the conflict without consulting the Southern Cameroon's government. Any analysis of the situations remains incomplete and biased. Well, by not engaging with their side of the story, the High Commissioner's visit inadvertently empowers the oppressor's narrative and, obviously, overlooks the suffering of the oppressed. Furthermore, the meeting with Prime Minister Dion Ngote and the women so-called civil society groups who are aligned with the interests of La République du Cameroun and do not represent the genuine voices of the Southern Cameroon's people further suppresses the genuine voices of the oppressed. This approach merely serves as a facet for the ongoing injustice and atrocities inflicted upon the Southern Cameroon's population. The sentiment amongst Ambazonians remains and reflects the deep frustrations and disappointments. Many feel that their plight has been systematically ignored and that international attention has failed to accurately capture the severity of this situation. The expectation among Ambazonian citizens is for a more balanced and inclusive dialogue that recognizes their grievances and engages directly with their representatives. This response underscores a growing concern within the Southern Cameroon's community that international diplomacy may be overlooking the true scale of the crisis in Ambazonia. A visit this sensitive without those highly affected? Oh well.